Breaking news as we come on the air tonight. American forces on the attack. The first wave of U.S. airstrikes hitting ISIS targets in Syria, opening a new front in the battle against the Islamic terror group. For the very latest, we turn to ABC's chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz.
Juju, this is the biggest wave of airstrikes we have seen in a single day since the U.S. began attacking ISIS in early August. And we did not do it alone. 5 Arab nations joining in the strikes, which pounded some 20 targets in the area of Raqqa. That is an ISIS stronghold and believed to be the area where those Americans and the British hostage were executed. The airstrikes carried out by a combination of U.S. stealth bombers and stealth fighters and Tomahawk missiles launched from the sea. In fact, the F-22 Raptor, an expensive stealth fighter used for the first time in combat. The targets, ISIS safe havens, command and control, and logistics centers. Twitter lit up with reports of huge explosions around Raqqa. The other Arab nations taking part, all largely Sunni, including Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. The kind of coalition the U.S. has been trying to build to go after ISIS. But a big step here tonight as the U.S. expands the fight against ISIS into Syria, where the president was loath to go for so long. But he gave the go-ahead for these strikes, and throughout this evening, he has been briefed on the progress. Tomorrow, he heads to New York and the UN. We do expect to hear from him then. These airstrikes will be ongoing. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff says the fight against ISIS in Syria will be persistent and sustainable, which means this will likely continue for months on end. Juju?
Martha, thanks as always. And joining me now, ABC News Chief Investigative Correspondent Brian Ross, who's been tracking the growing terror threat posed by these violent extremists. Brian, now that U.S. airstrikes are underway, what might this mean for ISIS?
Well, Juju, this is a ruthless group whose members seem to enjoy their medieval barbarism. The earlier limited U.S. airstrikes led to a round of beheadings. And as President Obama promised a heavier round of attacks, ISIS had already escalated its threats to America in anticipation of what did happen tonight. As ISIS turned up the tempo on its propaganda machine today, with new videos of its military-like formations and dire threats to American civilians, U.S. officials revealed details of a promised crackdown on Westerners who want to join ISIS or already have, like these Britons who appeared in a new video today.
We are working very closely with our international partners to try to mitigate this threat, to keep eyes on these individuals and to monitor their movements.
U.S. officials said today efforts to shut down the jihad pipeline to ISIS will focus on Boston, Minneapolis, and Los Angeles. Cities that have already sent a number of young recruits for ISIS basic training, the kind of young men and women seen in this latest video, parading in uniform with brand new AK-47s. The urgency of the coming White House push against ISIS was underscored today by one of the terror group's weekend propaganda messages. Its chief spokesperson urged supporters around the world, if you can kill a disbelieving American or European, especially the spiteful and filthy French, or an Australian or a Canadian, then rely upon Allah and kill him in any manner or way, however it may be. And today, ISIS followers in Algeria posted this video of a 55-year-old French citizen who they said they had kidnapped and would behead in 24 hours unless the French stopped its bombing of ISIS positions in Iraq. As for ISIS itself, it currently is believed to be holding some 15 Western hostages, including 2 young Americans, all of whom have been threatened with execution. Juju.
Well, Brian, is it possible that these airstrikes acted as cover for a potential rescue mission?
Well, that's possible. We don't know that and won't know that for a while. But what we do know is that U.S. authorities have said if there was any chance, they would try to mount a second attempt. And we know they've been flying over the area with drones and satellites in place, looking not only for command and control centers, but any indication whatsoever of where the hostages might be held.
But clearly, this is the first step in a major campaign. Thanks, Brian, for that update. And we turn now to ABC's Alex Marquardt, who spent the day talking with refugees fleeing the violent threat of ISIS. He's just across the border from Syria and joins us now from Gaziantep, Turkey, where there was already a mass exodus underway even before tonight's airstrikes. Alex?
Good evening, Juju. The past several days has seen ISIS pushing into northern Syria, surrounding and taking over predominantly Kurdish towns along the border with Turkey. That has sent an unprecedented number of refugees streaming across the border into Turkey. The UN says more than 130,000 over the past 4 days. That is the biggest single exodus of refugees since this war in Syria began over 3.5 years ago. We met many of those refugees who told us that if they'd stayed behind, they would have been executed by ISIS. They came with what little they could carry and angrily told us that the U.S. is doing nothing to stop the ISIS advance. That is before these airstrikes started. Many of the refugees here in Turkey will be very happy to see these airstrikes being carried out by the U.S. and the other countries. But at the same time, it could set off a new wave of refugees fleeing for safety from those areas where ISIS is operating. The UN and Turkey already preparing for many more refugees to cross the border. Juju?
Alex, thanks. Our thanks to Alex Marquardt reporting from the region. Stay tuned, of course, to ABC News for all the latest on these breaking developments.